Steven Spielberg handpicked Rachel Zegler, launching her into instant stardom. But now, he's completely silent, and insiders say it's no accident. Behind the scenes, Rachel reportedly challenged everything from choreography to camera angles, clashing with crew and testing Spielberg's patience. Then came the quote that changed everything. She was horrible to work with. What really happened between Hollywood's most respected director and his once promising star? And could that silence be the reason her career is falling apart? Let's break it all down. Hollywood's no stranger to rising stars, but few shot up and crashed down as fast as Rachel Zegler. She went from being Spielberg's chosen one to the face of one of Disney's biggest box office disasters. So, what really happened behind the scenes? And did Rachel sabotage her own career before it ever had a chance to soar? Rachel Zegler's Hollywood story didn't start on a big stage or through a powerful agency. It started with a smartphone camera and a viral video. At just 17, she posted a clip of herself belting out "Shallow" from A Star Is Born on social media. Her voice was raw, emotive, and utterly magnetic. The video caught fire, spreading across the internet and landing in the inboxes of casting agents for a project that, at the time, was one of Hollywood's most anticipated, Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story. Out of over 30,000 applicants, Rachel stood out, not just for her voice, but for her presence. Spielberg, the man behind E.T., Jurassic Park, and Schindler's List, chose this unknown high schooler to lead a $100 million production. It was the kind of story the entertainment press loves to romanticize. The Cinderella who skipped the ball and went straight to the palace gates. Headlines called her a once-in-a-generation talent, and the media couldn't get enough of this bright-eyed newcomer. And Rachel? She played the part perfectly. In interviews, she was humble, emotional, and visibly overwhelmed. She talked about practicing lines in her childhood bedroom and crying when she saw her name on a call sheet. The narrative was irresistible. This wasn't just a breakout performance, it was fate. Audiences quickly bought in. Rachel's voice soared on screen. Her performance as Maria earned her critical acclaim, and her social media exploded with new fans calling her the future of cinema. Overnight, she became more than just an actress. She became a symbol of fresh talent, authenticity, and diversity in an industry starving for new faces. From red carpets to award shows, Rachel was everywhere. She posed next to Spielberg, gave tearful speeches, and looked every bit like the next A-list star. But behind the perfect photos and glowing reviews, the seeds of something darker had already started to sprout. And while the public saw a fairy tale beginning, the industry was already catching wind of the storms brewing off camera. Until the first red flags started to appear. At first, everything about Rachel Zegler's rise looked flawless. But those paying closer attention started to notice cracks forming beneath the surface. It began with whispers, small, seemingly insignificant stories that didn't make headlines but quietly circulated within the industry. Crew members from West Side Story allegedly noticed Rachel wasn't just confident, she was unusually assertive for a newcomer. While some stars eased their way onto set, learning the ropes, Rachel reportedly came in with strong opinions about choreography, costuming, and even how scenes should be staged. One source claimed she pushed back on choreography directions, arguing that certain dance moves didn't align with her interpretation of Maria. On paper, that sounds like passion, but in practice, it caused delays, sometimes forcing production to stop while debates played out behind closed doors. Costume designers allegedly faced similar pushback. Rachel reportedly objected to specific outfits, not because they didn't fit, but because she felt they didn't flatter her or suit her vision of the character. While creative input isn't unusual for leads, especially those with a firm grasp on their role, industry insiders were surprised at how boldly she challenged the decisions of professionals with decades of experience. At the time, none of this made the tabloids. Most dismissed it as typical behind-the-scenes friction, a young actress finding her voice in a high-pressure environment. Even Spielberg seemed to keep things under control. After all, he'd worked with young talent before, and he was no stranger to nurturing raw potential. He knew the difference between nervous energy and genuine attitude. But here's where it gets interesting. The frequency of these behind-the-scenes stories started to pick up. What began as one or two vague anecdotes started turning into a pattern. Multiple sources began painting the same picture. Rachel wasn't just voicing opinions, she was clashing with people. She was slowing things down. And most troubling of all, she didn't seem to see a problem with it. Still, to the outside world, Rachel was untouchable. The film hadn't premiered yet, critics were already buzzing, and Spielberg still spoke highly of her in public interviews. But if you were paying close attention, you could tell something wasn't quite right. Something was brewing, just under the surface, and it wouldn't stay hidden for long. Steven Spielberg has directed some of the biggest names in Hollywood: Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Leonardo DiCaprio. But perhaps one of his greatest talents is his ability to nurture young, unproven actors. Think Drew Barrymore in E.T., Christian Bale in Empire of the Sun, or even Haley Joel Osment in AI. He's known for his patience, his mentorship, and his belief in raw potential. So when he cast Rachel Zegler, everyone assumed she'd be the next name on that legacy list. But as production on West Side Story rolled on, something changed. Insiders claim Spielberg's enthusiasm started to fade. Not all at once, but subtly. It wasn't that he publicly criticized Rachel. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. Multiple reports suggest Spielberg grew frustrated with Rachel's constant challenges to his direction. She reportedly questioned camera setups mid-scene, debated her character's lines, and occasionally argued with his editors during post-production. For a first-time film actress, that level of interference was rare and risky. Spielberg, who typically commands complete creative trust from his cast, was reportedly taken aback. One insider claimed he described Rachel as horrible to work with, a statement so out of character that it shook everyone who heard it. This wasn't just a critique, it was a warning. And in Hollywood, when Spielberg speaks, or doesn't, people listen. Still, he didn't make a public spectacle of it. He didn't pull her from the film or make dramatic edits to lessen her role. The movie premiered, Rachel was front and center, and critics praised her performance. But during the press tour, something felt off. Watch the interviews closely, and you'll see it. Spielberg lights up when praising Ariana DeBose, calling her mesmerizing and transformative. But when it comes to Rachel, the compliments are sparse, measured, sometimes absent entirely. That contrast didn't go unnoticed. Industry insiders began asking, had Spielberg changed his mind about his Golden Girl? And if so, why wasn't he saying anything? The silence became deafening. While fans continued to celebrate Rachel, the mood behind the scenes was shifting. People who once lined up to work with her started hesitating. Because if Spielberg, the most influential director of his generation, wasn't backing her anymore, what did that mean for everyone else? And as the whispers got louder, Rachel's next major project was already in motion. A high-stakes Disney remake that would either cement her stardom or send everything crashing down. After West Side Story, Rachel Zegler wasn't just seen as a breakout star, she was being positioned as the face of a new Hollywood era. The press called her the future. And Disney, always hungry for its next big princess success, made a bold move. They cast Rachel as Snow White in the live-action remake of one of its most iconic films. The expectations were enormous. Disney had just struck gold with live-action reboots like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. Executives believed Snow White would be the next billion-dollar hit. The studio poured over $250 million into the film. Massive sets were built. Special effects teams were hired to reimagine everything from the Enchanted Forest to the Evil Queen's Mirror. This wasn't just a movie, it was a legacy project, a cornerstone in Disney's expanding empire of reimagined classics. And at the heart of it all, Rachel Zegler. But instead of celebrating the honor, Rachel took a different approach, one that would spark a firestorm. In early interviews, Rachel openly criticized the original 1937 Snow White film. She called it outdated. She said the prince was a stalker and labeled the storyline creepy.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Never revisited Snow White again.
For many viewers, especially longtime Disney fans, this wasn't refreshing. It was disrespectful. Instead of approaching the role with reverence, she seemed to mock the very film that gave the character cultural significance in the first place. The backlash was swift and fierce. Social media erupted with anger. Fans accused her of being ungrateful, of trashing a beloved childhood story to push her own agenda. What was supposed to be a celebration turned into a battlefield between Disney loyalists and Rachel's defenders. But the controversy didn't end there. In an effort to modernize the film, Disney also changed the Seven Dwarfs into magical beings, a move that sparked criticism from disability rights advocates and fans of the original tale. And Rachel's comments, paired with these creative shifts, turned the movie into a lightning rod of cultural debate. By the time the film hit theaters, audiences were already skeptical. Many were outright hostile. What should have been a guaranteed hit turned into a box office disaster. Critics panned the film as hollow, confused, and overly woke. Others said it tried too hard to be modern and ended up losing the heart of the original story. And in nearly every negative headline, one name kept appearing: Rachel Zegler. Her portrayal of Snow White was labeled stiff, unlikable, and most damning inauthentic. The public didn't buy her version of the character, and worse, they blamed her for what they saw as a disrespectful approach to a timeless classic. Inside Disney's executive offices, the panic was real. Emergency meetings were reportedly held. Executives scrambled to understand how something with this much money, talent, and legacy behind it had gone so wrong. But for many, the answer was clear. The audience didn't reject Snow White because of the story, they rejected her. In today's world, a single moment can define or destroy your public image. And for Rachel Zegler, that moment came fast and hit harder than anyone expected. Following the disappointing release of Snow White, the internet turned on Rachel with lightning speed. Clips from her old interviews resurfaced, some where she mocked the prince, others where she dismissed the original film as weird. Individually, they might have been overlooked, but together they formed a narrative. Rachel wasn't just playing Snow White, she was tearing her down. The problem wasn't that she had opinions, it was how she delivered them. Smirking while calling a beloved classic creepy, laughing as she dismissed fan concerns. The tone struck people as arrogant, out of touch, almost smug. Then came the comment that lit the internet on fire. Rachel suggested that Snow White's failure might have been because audience interest had shifted toward the upcoming Minecraft movie. That one line, intended or not, sounded like a deflection, a way to avoid taking responsibility. The internet didn't hold back. Almost overnight, memes exploded across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Videos showed blocky Minecraft characters toppling Disney princesses with sarcastic captions like, "Snow White got crushed by Steve." Twitter threads mocked the idea that a pixelated sandbox game had dethroned Disney royalty. YouTube channels broke down her interviews frame by frame, analyzing every eyebrow raise and awkward pause. And the public? They laughed. But not with her. They laughed at her. Instead of apologizing, Rachel stayed quiet. No heartfelt statement, no acknowledgement of missteps, no attempt to connect with the fans who once championed her. And that silence made everything worse. It wasn't just the casual moviegoers piling on. Even Disney loyalists, people who grew up with fairy tales and sang every word of "Someday my prince will come," felt betrayed. They weren't just angry about the film's quality, they were hurt that someone given the honor of playing such an iconic role treated it like a joke. This wasn't your typical celebrity backlash. It was a digital reckoning. Because in 2025, when the internet turns against you, it doesn't do so quietly. It creates a storm of viral edits, TikTok stitch videos, commentary breakdowns, Reddit threads, and side-by-side comparisons of how it started versus how it's going. Rachel's fall from grace became content, a storyline people followed daily. And every new quote or clip just added fuel to the fire. It wasn't just that the audience didn't like Snow White, they felt like Rachel Zegler didn't like them. And in a world driven by fan engagement, that's not just a bad look, it's a career killer. At this point, the damage was done, but instead of doing what most stars do during a controversy, step forward, show humility, and rebuild goodwill, Rachel Zegler took a different route. She disappeared. When public sentiment nosedives, most celebrities launch what's known in Hollywood as a charm offensive. They hit the talk shows, post sincere apologies, and open up in emotional interviews. It's not just about saving face, it's about reminding people you're human, vulnerable, capable of making mistakes and learning from them. But Rachel didn't do that. She skipped press events. She refused select interview requests. She didn't address the viral backlash, the memes, or the headlines dragging her name. That silence, which may have been intended as strategic, only fueled the anger. Because to the public, it felt like she was retreating the moment things stopped going her way. The same confidence that once seemed charming now looked like arrogance. The assured voice that won her praise during West Side Story interviews was suddenly being recast as condescension. Even fans who once defended her began to turn, asking why she hadn't simply said, "I messed up." And without her voice guiding the narrative, others filled the void. YouTubers posted video essays titled "The Downfall of Rachel Zegler." TikTok creators stitched her quotes with sarcastic reactions. Commentary channels dissected her every word, comparing her to other stars who had handled backlash with grace, and came out stronger. The message was clear. Rachel wasn't doing herself any favors. The worst part? It all felt preventable. If she had simply acknowledged that her comments landed poorly, if she had shown even a flicker of self-awareness, if she had connected with the very audience she was losing, things might have turned out differently. But instead, she left the impression that she saw herself above the chaos, above the fans, above the fallout. And Hollywood noticed. Producers began to worry. If she couldn't manage a PR crisis now, how would she handle a future one? Would she retreat again? Would she let projects sink without lifting a finger to save them? The Rachel Zegler who once captivated the public as a fresh, grateful newcomer now appeared out of touch. Someone who only smiled when the cameras loved her and vanished when they didn't. It wasn't just about the Snow White failure anymore, it was about how she handled the aftermath. And in the unforgiving world of celebrity, how you respond to failure can define you even more than how you handle success. Now here's where things get eerily quiet. When Snow White flopped, many expected Spielberg, who once championed her, to defend her again. But he didn't say a word. In fact, his silence became louder than any statement. He praised co-stars like Ariana DeBose, but barely mentioned Rachel. Old footage resurfaced of him giving her short, cold acknowledgments at press events. People began reading into every pause, every gesture, every half smile. Was he distancing himself? Was the horrible to work with rumor true all along? Whatever the answer, one thing was clear: Hollywood was watching. Soon, insiders started whispering about a potential blacklist. Not official, of course. Hollywood never sends memos like that. But the word on the street was that studios were quietly passing on her. Why take the risk? If Spielberg regretted working with her, why would any other director sign up for the same drama? Producers started removing her name from shortlists. Casting agents hesitated to pitch her. One mistake is forgivable. Two major public disasters? That's a liability. And just like that, the phone that used to ring with opportunity started going silent. Rachel Zegler's rise was meteoric. Her fall, even faster. But the real question isn't whether she deserves the backlash. It's whether she can come back from it. Hollywood has forgiven worse. Stars with scandals, arrests, even jail time have made comebacks with the right narrative. But that path requires humility, reflection, and the willingness to admit fault. Can Rachel do that? Or has she already burned too many bridges? Whether every rumor is true or not, her story is a stark reminder. In Hollywood, it's not just about talent, it's about how you handle success, and even more, how you handle failure. Maybe Rachel's still writing her next chapter. Maybe this is just a rough detour on the road to redemption. But until then, her story stands as one of the most dramatic turnarounds in recent memory. Thanks for watching all the way through. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think Rachel Zegler deserved the backlash, or is she just the latest target of Hollywood's brutal spotlight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next story. Until next time, take care and stay curious.